The arrest of the comedy writer Graham Linehan, most famous probably for creating the Father Ted series.
In the last 5 years, hate crime for the LGBT community has risen 112%. So the first thing anyone should be saying within this conversation is solidarity to trans people across this country who are feeling scared, who are being dehumanised. When we even have a conversation that the idea of kicking someone in the balls, is that free speech or not? That is clearly incitement to violence. The second aspect here...
So that is an ongoing, obviously he's been arrested, but there have been no charges.
Yes, absolutely. And the second aspect here is, and I partly do agree, is around policing. I've had friends arrested in the last couple of weeks for holding cardboard signs saying, I support Palestine action. And I think it's this increasingly authoritarian moves from the government to ultimately crack down on embarrassing speech for them or things that they don't like. So I think there's two separate issues here.
Yeah, they are separate because obviously Palestine Action has been prescribed as a terror organisation.
But that's then the choice of priorities by this government to prescribe that organisation and then to tell the police this is a good thing to be doing. At the same time as I agree, we should be dealing with violence on our streets, violence against women and girls, making sure that people feel protected and secured. And that requires investment in our public services and particularly the police.
Tom, what do you make of it all?
I think the first thing to say in this discussion is solidarity with Graham Linehan for being arrested for making jokes on social media. Also solidarity with the many gender-critical women who have been harassed by the police in recent years, often at the behest of trans activists who take discomfort at the fact that they've been sticking up for women's sex-based rights. We need to put this in perspective here. We've got armed police arresting comedy writers at airports for telling jokes. And if this was an isolated incident, maybe that would be one thing. But at the moment, in England and Wales, more than 30 people are arrested every single day for things they post on the internet. Incidentally, that's more people than America were arresting for speech during the first Red Scare. If that's not a free speech crisis, I don't know what is. And I think the problem in this discussion, and we've seen it demonstrated here, Zach, I dare say, is that there's a lot of me speech rather than free speech. So we throw Graham Linehan under the bus whilst talking about Palestine action. I agree, people shouldn't be arrested for holding up placards saying I support Palestine action, but I also think
lots of people say they
shouldn't be arrested either.
That they are very different things here.
I mean, they are very different.
The law has changed. The law has changed, and the government has made Palestine Action a prescribed terror organisation, haven't they? So you can't really compare those two things.
I think the law is wrong in various different areas. I just wish that people like Zach would show a little bit more consistency. If it's speech you agree with, then you are happy to...
One is about speaking out against the ongoing genocide, and one is showing solidarity with people
you agree with,
fighting why you don't
against
women.
If I may, this is
marginalised communities who need defending, like the trans community, like the LGBT community, should have politicians from the Labour Party having their back.
A lot of it has to do with the police. I think the police in recent years have been carrying on like a cross between the Stasi and the Keystone Cops. They're harassing anyone at the behest of anyone who happens to be offended, and that's a big problem. But of course,
so are they misinterpreting what the politicians
Absolutely.
want?
I mean, there are a number of cases I've seen in which they are over-interpreting the law, in which they're going after people, quoting laws that don't exist. There is a huge amount of a problem within the police itself, within the College of Policing and the guidance they're putting out. But also, fundamentally, politicians can set the law. And not only do we have expansive, quote-unquote, hate speech laws on the books which are being used to crack down on dissent and free speech, we're also adding to them all the time. We've had the Online Safety Act, which has introduced all kinds of new offences, which, yes, was initiated by the Conservatives, but supported wholeheartedly by the Labour Party. You've got Labour now talking about a kind of crackdown, not legally, but in terms of guidance imposed on councils on Islamophobia, which many groups, faith groups and otherwise, have said could lead to the chilling of discussion of religion. So the direction of travel, as far as politicians are concerned, is only in one direction. It's towards more censorship. There's a depressing cross-party consensus on all of this. And I think what we're seeing now is that nobody is safe from this dynamic. If comedy writers, who are known for being pretty robust, who are known for making jokes, can be arrested at airports as if they were some sort of dangerous terrorists, surely now is the point at which we need to talk about ripping up these laws which have so eroded free speech.
The trans community, just like the vast majority of people in this country, want to be safe on the streets, and that means more bobbies on the streets, that means community policing.
You condemn it seriously
and that
enough
means
to condemn the violence.
Less people policing tweets rather than the streets.
There's been media reporting over the last week or so about a property that Angela Rayner has purchased. Well, Angela Rayner has now admitted that she did not pay enough tax.
Me personally, I don't judge my politicians on the basis of how, nifty or otherwise their tax lawyers are. You hold them to account, obviously, for what they do, but also you hold them to account for their policies, primarily, and what they stand for. At the same time, largely because this Labour government doesn't really stand for very much, doesn't really know what it's for, they've been really running on recent years on just kind of empty moralism. The Tories are just bad people, they're craven people. A Tory minister in the last government just had to do so much as pass wind and they'd be calling for them to resign. So now we're in a situation in which Angela Rayner gets caught out it becomes very difficult for them. It also becomes difficult for the top of the Labour Party, because if you think amongst, the three most prominent figures in terms of Rayner, Reeves and Starmer, she's the only one who, as far as the public are concerned, seems to even have a pulse, let alone anything else. So this is a big problem.
I'd bring capital gains tax in line with income tax.
You'll
I'd
send
invest
everybody out
in
of the
public
country.
structure.
We
don't need to
Let him
tax and
answer.
spend, we need to spend and tax. Who are we more worried about? Multimillionaires and billionaires who aren't paying their taxes, or people running our
let Tom
NHS?
come in.
As you well know, it's also not going to raise enough, and it's not going to solve the problems of the economy, because before we even get into questions of wealth taxes, redistribution, what have you, you need a growing economy. It needs to be a dynamic economy. It needs to be something which is delivering for people, in which energy is getting cheaper, in which we have industry. Again, none of this is possible if you're not only in favour of all of these insane net zero policies, which frankly have been making all of these things worse, but also because of the fact that you're ideologically opposed to the idea of economic growth. What you want to impoverish this country to maybe make up for less than 1% of global emissions.
I think wildfires and floods in this country might
going
impoverish
to go
this
for
country. We've seen wildfires and floods. We've seen in Valencia people die, and we've been very lucky that that hasn't yet
People are
happened
not
here.
buying this doomsday stuff, and
Well,
nor are they going
climate
to
denial
buy
should
it.
be
Working
balanced
class people do not want their
We've got
lives
a
to get
couple of
worse to make
minutes.
you feel
Climate
better.
denial.
Until a couple
All
of
you
minutes.
have is insults.
We should ask who
Okay.
funds spiked, because I think when we look into who
This
funds
is hilarious.
spiked,
Our readers,
Because
by
we've
the
got
way,
a
we
couple
give
of minutes
£5 a month,
until
so
Prime
thank
Minister's
you.
question.